Hello and welcome to this episode of Yen Talks brought to you by the Youth Engagement Transition Initiative or YETI. My name is Everett Deibler and we're here today talking about VR and connecting young people to the system of vocational rehabilitation. And with me today is my co-host, Michael Scanlon, M4. What's going on, buddy?
Hey Everett, happy to be here. I'm so excited to have this great conversation with you all today. And I'm an advocate based in Connecticut and an adult ally, proud adult ally for the Yen and Yeti projects. And
And
I'm
I
going to
guess we
pass.
both are, right? We're the golden guys, right? That's what we call ourselves, is the
We are Golden
golden guys,
Guys
because we're the old
representing.
heads talking to you. But who's
And
with us today, M4?
so I'm going to pass it to Billy Pickens. Billy, would love to hear you introduce yourself and share a little bit about all the great things you're doing.
Yes, Michael, definitely. Hello, everyone. My name is Billy Pickens, and I am hailing from the great state of North Carolina, Charlotte to be specific. I'm a self-advocate, and I'm a person with a disability. I'm totally blind with progressive hearing loss. I have been since birth. And I like to say I've been a self-advocate pretty much all of my life, but specifically beginning in middle school and throughout high school. In college, I graduated with a bachelor's in communications and a minor in journalism. And I've been doing work with different youth centers throughout the country that serve people with disabilities. But specifically, I'm now part of YETI, the Youth Engagement Transition Initiative, and have been now for three and a half years now coming up. So,
Yep.
yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thanks so much,
And
Billy.
Elizabeth.
Hello, today I'm Elizabeth Stout. I'm a Yeti member and have been since 2021. Hard to believe it's been that long, but I've been a advocate for youth with disabilities way back since 2018 at this point. It's something I am very dedicated to. Um, I, on the For my main role, am a qualitative public health researcher with the Department of Veterans Affairs in Michigan, but love finding ways to be an advocate, even as someone working full time. And
Yeah.
Yeti is a great option.
Yeah. And thank you both for being here. And we really thought that we brought your experience and your expertise to like the whole idea of both of you either have worked or are working and or living on your own and making it happen and doing what you do. So, Elizabeth, I wanted to start with you because I feel like this is something that I feel like we talk a lot about in Yeti is why should planning start with strengths and interests first when you're talking to young people? Why should the planning process start with strengths and interests?
I think the most important reason that planning starts with strengths and interests is that is how you get the youth to be engaged and want to participate. Because if you feel like you are going into a starting the planning session and no one is listening to you and caring about what you actually want to be doing and feel is a good option, it's really easy to feel, why am I even doing this? It's a positive way to get the youth to be engaged and active in it. And it's also the way that I believe you have a stronger outcome in the sense of it's very much more effective to be making your plans based on the strengths and interests that the youth have. Because it's unrealistic to expect that someone is going to either want to, or in many cases can, completely change what they like to do and what they are strong at doing based on a plan. If you just come up with this is what we think is the best option, we don't care what you think about it, then, hmm, both, I don't think young youth is going to want to follow that plan, but also maybe they can't. We all have things that we are good at and things that we are not so good at. So it's why it has to be the basis of making sure that you are listening. And an important part of that is also make sure that you are considering the strengths and interest as defined by the youth, because there can be a big difference between what the individual thinks are their strengths and interests and what others may perceive. So, as is a common theme for, I'd say, everything that Yeti focuses on, it's about listening to the young adult themselves. Don't think that you know them better just because you are supposedly a professional on something.
Thanks, Elizabeth. That was really good. And I feel like what I heard you say, and I know M4, I thought you might have a reaction. That's why I kind of laid out there for a second because I was
Oh,
like,
I did. I'm trying to be
is
polite and not
M4 is
interrupt.
M4 gonna roast us already? But I love how direct you were, Elizabeth, when you're like, hey, if it's not about me, I don't want to be there. And just because you think you know me best doesn't mean you do. Even if you are a professional in this field, it's best to work directly with me, right? And the other thing that you kind of mentioned is like a lot of documents that we look at are focused on deficits or on where improvements need to be made, not so much on strengths, right? And so reframing that to think about strengths and interests first is super important.
hmm and no, I actually do have a quick comment, Elizabeth. I remember when we've met up many times at conferences and for Yeti, we've had amazing conversations on your baking and your love of all things desserts. I'm still waiting for your cookbook one day, and I do want a signed copy one day. And I just had such the best time. Like you're lighting up right now, just me mentioning that. And like that's like, oh wow, like that's a key example of I'm sure we could chat about baking and desserts all day long. And I'm just using you as an example, but like how incredible. I'm sure you've had really incredible conversations and those moments of connection that went along with your baconade with friends or family, or maybe you giving someone something you made out of love and your creativity really sparked those. And, and I'm just curious if that's bringing up any thoughts for you. Did you have those moments of connection where you felt like your strengths and interests were honored and people see all the great things that you're doing?
Definitely. And I've seen that in ways even like with the baking, as you were just mentioning, because I got to be known as the cookie girl in undergrad. And whenever we'd have events for the clubs that I was in, and um, even for classes, I'd get to bring cookies. And I loved the fact that I had people acknowledging a way that I could participate and not focusing on the fact, for example, that as someone with epilepsy, I can't drive. So, kind of like what was mentioned earlier with the deficits versus skills, that in I think in all components of life, there are strong benefits to focusing on the what we do have as strengths and the ways that those can overcome what are the deficits. So certainly not focusing on those. And but I've also definitely seen that in like professional senses as well, in terms of discovered that I am don't want to sound cocky, but I am strong at giving presentations and participating in conferences and going to events and things like that. So I found jobs that were specifically had a lot to do with that skill. And that was a great way to connect with the people that I was working with and to feel like they appreciated my strengths. And once again, not being focused on things like how I couldn't drive to things, for example, or um, so definitely, Michael, that it's helps a lot in so many ways to be focused on things that both you enjoy and consider to be your skills.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, wait a second though. Before you go to Billy's next question, though, wait a minute. I didn't even know Elizabeth bakes. I know M4 can throw out a cookie though, because I've had those at the Casa de Everett. Like I've had those, but I did not know that Elizabeth was known as the cookie girl. Why did I not know
and will
this?
that be
I
your
didn't know
cookbook
that
And I
either.
name,
and
Elizabeth,
I
the
and
Cookie
I
Girl?
want to get to know, and I think Billy does too.
Did not know that either.
I want to get to know that. So let's mark that down on the next visit that we have.
Elizabeth's on cookie duty
that
next
that
in-person Yeti
that
event.
that Everett and Billy get the first. They get the first dibs on whatever you bring. Go ahead, go ahead, M4.
No, no, I was just gonna say that would that be an amazing cookbook name, The Cookie Girl, Elizabeth, for
Yeah.
we're rooting for you. So we'll both bring something out of the next Yeti meetup. And I
Yeah.
know I wish we could talk longer and but I will maybe off the clock hit you up for some more recipes, Elizabeth. But you mentioned the key word though, Elizabeth, was discovery. In our last podcast, we could talk for like hours on the word discovery. That's a little hint, for the other recording. But anyway, Billy, over to you, my friend. I would love to kind of do a deep dive and learn from you on what does self-advocacy look like for you in your own life?
I think really building off of what Elizabeth so eloquently stated a second ago, I think one of the biggest struggles that a lot of youth and just people in general, especially people with disabilities, navigate is feeling like they're being heard. Even for myself, at times, I it wasn't that people weren't hearing me. It was that I didn't realize the power of my own voice. I think that's the word that comes up for me when it comes to self-advocacy is the power of your own voice, realizing the power of your own voice. I think a lot of people sometimes when they think of advocacy or self-advocacy in general automatically jump to, oh, uh, people are doing Yeti work. I'm sure y'all can relate. Anytime we talk to people, somebody will say, how can we get our people to do the same work you're doing? How can we get our people to go to DC and talk to these politicians and people like that? And I always say it's not about, I mean, that's great if you can do that, but it's not about that. It really starts small. It starts with deciding, feeling like you have the power to decide what you want to eat for dinner or where you want to go, or just feel like you have the power to decide what you want to do in your life. And that it's self-advocacy. And I feel like if you can find the confidence and feel like you have the power to speak up in general and share what you need. And it's like Elizabeth said, uh, a lot of times, like we're all individuals before with individuals with disabilities. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that, and they may think, oh, we have our own plan for them. We have things that we want them to do. And I think that a big part of self-advocacy is realizing you have the power to say respectfully, no, this is not what I want to do. I have my own strengths, and I have my own likes and dislikes that are important to me. And whether it's, something as simple as what I want for dinner, something as big as what I want my career to be, I'm going to speak up about that. I'm going to make sure that that is heard. And yeah, maybe I have to make some negotiations depending on what my strengths are, but it's still going to be aligned with what I want for myself and the goals that I want to achieve in my life.
Mm.
Yeah, and I guess the one thing, Billy, I want to highlight is, can you talk about what you the milestone that you just crossed recently and how that's probably been built over time in your advocacy journey to get to where you are now.
Yeah, yeah. So I just recently moved into my first apartment. I went down a lease on my first apartment. So that was really exciting. But I've always wanted to be independent and be able to uh, live on my own, or at least as independently as possible. And that was important to me. And so I actually I've been doing it for years, but I went to New York to the Helen Keller National Center a few years ago where I started some independent living training. But I recently, at the Voc, speaking of Voc Rehab, at the Division of Services for the Blind here in North Carolina, they had an independent living class. And so it was a 9 class long experience where I got to cook and learn about cleaning and just learning about different aspects of living on my own. And so that was really huge. And not only are they going to do that, but they're also going to have the teachers come out and teach me specifically within the apartment. So it's definitely been a journey, but it's definitely been exciting for me. And I'm thankful that my mom is she always said she's my roommate, so she helps out too. But just my family and people that have supported me in general, and friends that have helped me find the confidence and the ability to say, "Hey, this is what you want to do. We're going to help you make it happen, and we're going to make sure that you feel as independent as possible, that you're able to achieve your dreams." So they really played a role in that. I think that's what's really important if you're a counselor or you're a teacher or someone involved in the life of a person with a disability. Make sure that you constantly make them feel like they can do that. Um, Even if you don't know that yourself, sometimes we don't know ourselves, but we're going to find a way, we're going to educate ourselves to make sure that that person feels empowered to do what they want to do with their life and achieve the goals they want to achieve. And I feel like I've had that kind of support through my family, through my friends, and the people in my circle, and Yeti as well.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you so much, Billy. I just want to quickly say two things that stuck out. Was those small everyday decisions and actions. I really appreciate just hearing about, like, you learning about cooking and all those steps. And I think so many of us in Yeti could talk for hours, right, on how we know we can achieve something. And through breaking it down and having that support, anything is possible. But what I'm really sitting with for a minute was the power of no, like those small moments of you saying, no, I don't think so. Because I got to say, too, this is a compliment. Billy, you and Elizabeth are two of the most polite, professional, nicest people I know. And so I know, I just wanted to make a note, like, whenever I hear you, you are so powerful because you are you have this presence of, because advocacy is not a one size fits all, and it was never meant to be that way. So I just wanted to commend you both that, whenever I'm in the space with you, you are always listening first, and you often let other people speak up first, but you're like the powerful, like, period at the end of the sentence. You always like mic drop really powerful things. I don't know if you both recognize that in yourselves.
Yeah, your
I
thoughtfulness comes
appreciate
off
that.
the screen. Your thoughtfulness always comes off the screen. And that's from day one of knowing you. And that's why, honestly, when we thought about who could do which podcast, we were talking about this series of pods, I thought the two of you were two of the best to do this because of the way you present that information. And that kind of leads me to maybe a difficult question for Elizabeth because I feel like it is one that a professional might hear this question and go, "What do you mean?" And I'm saying that to say that I know M4 and I, and to some extent, actually both of you, all of us, have gotten the chance to play a professional role in this space, and we're all driven to see positive outcomes happen, right? And that causes us, I think, sometimes to move quickly through the process, to do what we think is right, to get to a positive end result, right? And that's because we all care so deeply and want to see the best for the people that we're supporting. But what can professionals do, Elizabeth, to listen to youth and families better and kind of slow down and be more thoughtful about that process?
I think the most important part is to ensure that that is built into plans in the sense of make it a dedicated requirement that we are going to have this um, time frame and this goal of talking to so and so or a specific number of people within a uh, youth or families within a category. Don't just have it be a asterisk on the side of it would be helpful to talk to them, but make it a actual requirement for moving forward, that this is going to be part of our process. Because Everett, I certainly know what you mean about wanting to move forward, and that it can be tempting to kind of sidestep the part of having uh, youth and families participate. But it's crucial to, right from the start, make that a critical component, not just a little extra, but and that also helps if you have it planned from the beginning, because it's a lot easier for youth and families, I would argue, to participate if they know that they are part of the project or program, and that they are valued, that you want them to be participating and value their thoughts, and that they're on the same level, that you're not saying, we're the professionals, we just have you here to check off a box. And that goes back to what I was saying in terms of, even though you want it to be a requirement, make it so it's not just a little tick box of, we talked to a youth for 10 minutes, that's good. It's about actually having them be engaged and know that they are part of the team, and that you value and are actually utilizing as well. Because it's a lot easier to participate when you know that what you are sharing is having an impact. It's part of why I would argue Yeti is extra uh, easy to be a member of, is opportunity to always be sharing our voices. And there's never any question to the Yeti members that you want
That
it.
means so much to me, Elizabeth, because we try so hard to make sure that what we're doing is not just for doing its sake, that
Yeah.
it actually is going to get out. And yes, this podcast is an example of that. But we try to make sure that what you say you want to have happen to make happen. And if it can't happen, we try to be as transparent as we can be about why there's barriers and what we're going to do to work around them. And so, and before I know you have one more question for Billy,
Yeah.
too.
Again, every recording, Everett and I could keep talking for hours and hours, but Billy, over to you, my friend. Would love to hear your thoughts on, both in your own life, but in your expertise, what helps young people feel confident speaking up, whether that's, at home, school, work, anywhere.
I think most importantly, being heard. But I think it definitely starts small. I can say for me personally, when I was, and going back to the strengths thing, when I was in middle school and I was first presented with self-advocacy and what it meant and how much of an impact it could have on my life, I like you said before, I'm pretty polite. I'm pretty non-confrontational. Uh, I wouldn't say I'm shy per se. I just don't like or didn't like really speaking up at the time. And so my teacher at the time was like, "Hey, I understand that you're not the biggest in confronting people directly or speaking up to them. So how about you put it in writing?" And so I said, "Yeah, that's a strength that I have." And so I started writing, and I wrote a letter to all of my teachers, and it really changed the relationship I had with my teachers and uh, how they interacted with me. And it really helped us have that one-on-one relationship where I did eventually become a lot more confident and comfortable with speaking up and being more vocal about what my needs were and what I was expecting of my life. And so I think really focusing on their strengths, so whether it's writing or even if it's unconventional, even something like drawing or something that tells their story and helps people understand what they're looking for in life and what goals they're trying to achieve, allowing them to express that in the way that they feel comfortable expressing that. I think that that's huge in building confidence. But I really always come back to just let them be heard. Let them speak up. And you may agree, you may not agree. What's important that you listen, that you hear them out, and that you try to, if nothing else, meet them halfway and saying, "Hey, I want to help make sure that you feel the confidence to speak up and you feel like your goals and your needs are going to be met, regardless of where I, as a professional, might stand with that." And so I think that that's huge, and really making sure that they feel confident and they feel that like they can have an impact. And even going to what Elizabeth said, that's one thing I love about Yeti is that the adult allies it's a matter of they're in the car with us. They'll be the GPS. They'll be the guide, but we as the youth are ultimately driving the car. And so I think that's what really helps us feel confident to be able to speak up, and that's why we become good self advocates, not only in our personal lives, but also uh, in what we do nationally and what we do with other organizations throughout the country.
Well, and thank you, Billy, for saying that. And I want to say thank you both for being here with M4 and I on this episode. But I want to say that I feel like I had an aha moment at the end of this because, Billy, Elizabeth mentioned about having intentional time to listen to young people and their families, right? Being intentional about that. And Billy, you said, hey, like, give them space to tell their story, how they want to tell it, when they want to tell it, and do that. And the ironic part is we tried to build Yeti, and M4 knows this, as a golden guy for years. We were working on having conversations and connecting. But when we got a group of youth together and had essentially a think tank about what they thought about youth engagement around transition related spaces. And then we opened the mic up for people to tell their story over pizza and salad. That is when the group began to be the group that it is now. And it's grown to the community that it's grown to now. And you just both mentioned that as linchpins for professionals in the space, right? Listen intentionally and give me space to tell you who I am from my perspective. It means everything. And so thank you both for your time. Thank you, M4, for being here again. We have one more episode in this series together, so let's do that. Yeah, thank you guys.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you all.
Uh, have a good rest of your day.
Great.
Glad we could participate.